Okay, we're going to be starting a new unit today. And in the last unit, we talked about what a reflection, a rotation, and a translation looked like. And you were able to just look at a couple of pictures of images and be able to decide what happened. Like, was it reflected or rotated or translated? But we haven't really performed them yet. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to work on actually doing reflections. And in the future, we'll talk about doing rotations and doing translations. So in your guys' packets, you should see this page at the very front that's going over reflections. And we're going to kind of see a couple of different ways that we can do reflections. And so I'm going to kind of be going back and forth on like doing some stuff here on my computer and then also showing you how to do it on like with the dock camera, because some of this we're going to want to use our patty paper for. And so we want to make sure that you can kind of follow along. And it's hard to show on the screen with the patty paper because you can't really see what I'm doing. So for some of these, I'm going to be switching over to the dock cam just so you can kind of see how I'm actually performing the reflection. But the first thing we're going to do is on these couple of examples here, they've got these shapes and they're putting it on what we call dot paper. You've maybe seen dots like this before. Maybe you've played that game where you're trying to like connect and make little boxes and try to get as many boxes as you can. That's kind of the dot paper that we're talking about here. But what you're going to see is shapes drawn on there. And then there's going to be a line that you're trying to reflect over. And you can kind of see there's a variety of ways that you could have that happen. You could have a horizontal line, you could have a vertical line, you could have a diagonal, you could have lines that are completely separate from the shape, you could have some that go through the shape. And so I kind of want to show you how to reflect over that. You don't need to use patty paper for all of these, but maybe if you're someone who doesn't really see it easily, like you're not super visual when you're looking at what's going on, using your patty paper is like a really good tool to help you actually perform the reflection or whatever it is that we're doing and actually see where the points are going to go. So I'm going to switch here to my dock cam. So you can kind of see I've got the exact same thing here on my little camera, and I'm going to show you guys how I would perform this first reflection. And so everyone should have a piece of patty paper because I passed that out to everybody. If you don't, now would be a great time to speak up. Okay, but what I'm going to suggest that you guys do is put your patty paper right on top of this here, and then what we're going to do is trace our shape. So I'm going to trace this entire shape here, and I'm going to trace the line that it's reflecting over. You also want to make sure that you label all the corners, like with the letters that they're giving you. Make sure you take your time with tracing. You don't want to be super sloppy here. You want to try to make it look as close to the original as possible. Okay, so you can see I've got mine traced here, and now I'm going to actually perform the reflection. And so to do that, you're going to take your piece of paper and you're going to just flip it upside down because that would mimic what a reflection does. It flips everything in the reverse order. And then to get it placed correctly, you're just going to line up that line with the line that was on your paper. So you can kind of see if I move it over here to the side, you can see how my line is right here going up and down. So I'm just going to slide it over a little bit so it lines up perfectly with that line that was already there. And then if I kind of just press down on that, and some students will even take their pencil and they'll just kind of press down on the patty paper here, because then what it does is it actually helps trace the lines. You can kind of see a faint little line there. But if you kind of go over your marking that you made, it'll transfer it for you. And then you can kind of see where it goes. Mine's really, really faint. It looks a little bit better, not through the lens of the camera here. But the other thing that you can do is you can just kind of see, okay, this point is one down from the top right next to this line. So I'm just going to go here and we're going to call that O, and then to make sure you're labeling it prime, okay, because anytime that we do a new one, we don't use the original points, we use prime for that. Okay, and then I'm going to do the other one. So you can continue to lay it down and lift up, or you can kind of see that tracing that you made by pressing down on your patty paper to see where these points go. And then you're just going to connect those dots. If you have a ruler, if you want to make your lines look really nice and straight and clean, you can use a ruler. If you have like your lunch card, that would also work really well as a ruler too. The other thing that some students will start to recognize is when you do reflections, the new shape is the same distance away from the line as the old shape. So what I mean is from the line to M, so from here to here, it's one space. And so you're going to go the same amount the other direction in order to get the reflected piece. And so you could actually have done that with all of these. I would say that works really well if you have lines that are vertical or horizontal, and you can just kind of count left to right or up or down. When you start to get into the diagonal ones, or even if it starts to get overlapping like the second one's going to do, then you might still want to go and use your patty paper. So if you look at this next one, this time the line that we're reflecting over goes straight through the shape. So when I reflect it, what's going to happen is that this is going to overlap on top of itself. Okay, so again, some of you can start to see, well, I'm just going to count how far away these letters are, and I'm going to just go the opposite direction. You can still use patty paper to help you with this, so I'm just going to trace this one as well. And trace that line. And then again, to do my reflection, I'm just going to flip this upside down, and I'm going to line up my line there, and then you can kind of see where that's going to go. And so you can see J is going to be, my J prime is going to be right here. P prime is going to be up here. Oh, you know what? I flipped it this, it should go this way. I flipped it the other direction. I was flipping it as if the shape went like this, when instead it's got to go up and down. So let me show you that again. I'm going to start over. Okay, instead of flipping it left or right, we want to flip it up or down. So I'm going to take my paper, I'm going to flip it this way instead, and then line up. Because remember, with reflections, everything should go backwards, or if you're counting, everything should go in the opposite direction. So my Q, if originally on here, it's down 2 spaces from the line, so it should go up 2 spaces from the line. And that's where my Q prime should go. And if I lay my patty paper down, that matches, because that's where I have my Q. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing with my P and my J. So J prime should be right there, and P prime should be right there. Okay. Like I said, for those first two, you can use patty paper. Some of you will start to get really good that you're able to just count and kind of know the relationship between how far away a shape is from the line. For this last one, though, with it being a diagonal line, these are the ones that if you try to count, it's doable, but this is where I see students make a lot of make mistakes, because they count in the wrong direction, because it's kind of hard to know what direction to go since the line you're working with is a diagonal. So for this one, especially with that diagonal line, I would recommend that you do use patty paper for ones like these. So if I trace, and then I'm going to flip over that line. So I'm going to take this piece of paper, I'm going to flip it, line that up. You can now clearly see where those new points should go. And so it maybe looks a little odd, because sometimes I'll see students want to count, like for S, they'll want to count left to right. So they'll just want to go 1 and put it here. But if I actually lay my pad paper down, that's not where that S point goes. So you can see it's actually supposed to go right there. So that's why I would recommend using patty paper on these ones, because that's the kind of mistake that I would see someone make, is they would count in the wrong direction, and then you get your shape in the wrong spot. So you don't want to have to do that. You want to avoid those mistakes if possible. So using your resources like the patty paper would be really wise, especially if you feel like you're going to do something like that. All right, do we have any questions on how to do that with the dot paper? Okay, so now right underneath that, it goes to the coordinate plane, and I'm going to switch back to my note outline because you can kind of see it a little bit better on here. Let me get to the right page. Oops, I'm in the wrong thing. This one. Okay, so if I'm looking at my coordinate plane here, and in this case, it's a little bit easier to use your lines of reflection to count. You can still use patty paper here, but if you understand how to count left to right, up and down, that's what you're going to be doing on the coordinate plane. Now, if they had asked me on here to do like a diagonal reflection, then maybe I'd want to go back to my patty paper. But you can kind of see over here that what they have is all these coordinates that they're giving us. And then they're telling us here in the middle what to reflect over. And we saw some of this notation in another section, but I want to kind of go over the pieces here because up on that dot paper, we didn't really see any of this lettering that they're giving us here. But if you look at this little r, so I'll just write this down here at the bottom, little r stands for reflection. And then after that, you're going to see something like x-axis or y-axis, or you can see some of them have like just little letters for the line that you're reflecting over. And then in parentheses, they're going to give you something. So I'll just put a B there. So like I said, little r stands for reflection. The piece that's in the subscript right next to that, so in this case, the x-axis, that's the line of reflection that you're using. And then that B, or whatever's in the parentheses, is what's being reflected. So you can kind of see for all of these, they have that notation. And so they're telling us different things they want us to reflect over on the graph and different points that they want us to reflect. Now you'll also see on the far left, they have all those coordinates written out for us. And then over here on the right, they have a prime and then they have blanks because what they want you to do is do the reflection and then actually state what coordinate it went to. So let me show you how to do a couple and then I'll give you some time to try a couple on your own. So for the first one, they want us to reflect point A over the x-axis. Where's the x-axis at again? Right, it's that horizontal line that we see here on our graph. So that's my x-axis. So what I would do is figure out A is up here at -2, 5. How far from the x-axis is that A? So if I just count from the x-axis is up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So to reflect, going to the x-axis, I need to go down 5. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then when we label that, remember it's A prime, because we're doing a new point, and then we're going to just label that new coordinate. Now it's at -2, -5. If you look at the second one, we're reflecting over the y-axis this time, so that would be the other big part of your graph, the one that goes up and down, and we're doing B. So how far away from the y-axis is point B? Right, it's 5, but what direction? 5 to the right. So we need to go the opposite. So from the line, we need to go 5 to the right, left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And again, we call that B prime, and that's at -5, 7. Okay, now like I said, sometimes they won't say x-axis, y-axis. Sometimes they'll actually have a little letter to represent the line, and maybe they'll have another line somewhere. So if we kind of look at our graph, there's a line here. There's line M. I'm going to kind of go over that in this blue kind of highlighter color. And then we have line N, which is this one here. Okay, I'm just kind of highlighting those so you can kind of see them a little bit better. And so what I want to do now is reflect over those. So if you look at letter C, they want you to reflect over line M. M is this one that I highlighted kind of in that bluish green color. And they want me to reflect point C because that's in the parentheses after that. So how far away from C is that line? Good, it's 3 to the left, so we need to go where? Good, 3 to the right, and that's C prime. What's that as a coordinate? Yeah, 9, -4. Okay, why don't you guys take a little bit of time and try to do the rest of them in this section. One thing I just want to say before you guys start to work is look at these three. What points are they wanting you to reflect? Right, they want us to do A, B, and C a second time. So one thing I want you guys to add to your notation, if you're going to start to reflect points multiple times, don't label them A prime, B prime, C prime again. We should add another little tick. So I'm just going to add that into my notes here. So you can kind of see I wrote A double prime, B double prime, C double prime. So I want you to make sure you label it correctly on your graph, okay? So take a couple minutes and go ahead and do the remainder of those problems. Okay, what'd you guys get for your coordinate for the D prime? Good, it should be 4, -4, because you're reflecting it over the x-axis. So D is 1, 2, 3, 4 above, so you should go 1, 2, 3, 4 down. That's my D prime. Okay, and now we're going into the second set of A, B, and C. So where's the A double prime? Yep, it's right there on the graph. So what's that as a coordinate? -2, 1. Good. And notice how I labeled that, A double prime. So make sure you guys have that as well. B double prime should be over that line M, should be right here. So that's at 7, 7. And then C double prime, you reflected it over the y-axis. So it should be over at, let's see, where'd my C go? It's 3 to the right, so I should go 3 to the left. So that should be at -3, -4. Good. All right, any questions on reflecting something over on the coordinate plane like that? Okay, so like I said, for those ones, you don't have to rely on patty paper because you should be able to just kind of count how far away it is from a line on the graph. The only time I would maybe use patty paper is if you were having to reflect over a diagonal line. That won't happen a ton, but it could happen on a graph. So if that does show up, then you would maybe want to switch and use your patty paper again. Okay, so in the last section here, we're reflecting some more, but instead of being on dot paper or instead of being on the graph, it's just kind of giving us a figure. And this figure has all these points and has lines going through them, but you can kind of see over here on the examples that we're kind of going, again, with our reflections, we're reflecting over different lines and they're wanting us to do different points. You can also see on some of the letters like D and H that those ones look a little bit different than the other set. That's because they're writing it backwards. So for this one, again, you can, if you're a visual person, you don't have to use your patty paper. You can kind of just imagine what would happen if I reflected over the line. Think about when we did line symmetry. If you fold the shape in half, where are those points going to go? But if you can't visualize it, use your patty paper. So I'm going to switch back to my doc cam because I want us to do these last couple of examples here, and I'm going to show you how to do that with the patty paper. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my patty paper, I'm going to put it on top of this shape, and I'm going to trace everything. So I'm going to trace all the points and all the lines. Okay, and you can also see I put in all of those dotted lines as well. So now what I can do to start reflecting these, so if I just kind of look at what I have over here, this first one wants me to reflect point A over line M. So line M on my patty paper is this one right here. So what I can actually do now is I can take my patty paper and I can fold it over line M. So I can just imagine if I creased it along that line, okay? And then I'm going to look to see A is right here, and if I kind of lift it up to see what's underneath it, or you can even think about like if I flip my patty paper over, what's there? Or even like, especially if you are in here, hold your patty paper up to the light, because like through the light you can maybe see the letter that you have, but you can see A and C. You can kind of maybe see this through the doc cam. It's really, really faint, but you can see that A is going to C. And so here on my notes, I'm going to write C for my answer. Okay, so let's scoot on over here to B. This time I'm reflecting over line N. So looking back at my patty paper, line N is this one right here. And I want to see where C is going to go. So I'm going to fold that in half along this line this time. Okay, so there's that line. And then if I look, C is right there, and now it lines up with letter G. Hopefully you can see that. So this is going to be letter G. Again, some of you are probably like, I don't need the pad paper for that. I can see what's going on in the picture, and that's fine. I'm just giving you multiple ways that you can approach these problems. Let's do letter D really quick before I let you guys try to do the rest of them. This one is flipping the notation on you. We're reflecting over line P this time. So looking at my pad paper, line P is this one. And I want to know what point goes to B. So you can almost just think if I fold this over line P here, my B is right there, and that's the point that I wanted to get to. So if you look through on the other side, what point's on the other side of that? Yeah, isn't it F? So this should just be F. Okay, so why don't you take a couple minutes and try to do the remaining problems. Okay, let's quickly go through these here. Let's just fill in this column. What did you guys get for this one? Good. B, the next one right underneath it. Good. B again. And the last one in this column. A, very good. Okay, and then over here. Good. Now this one, the point was on the line of reflection. Remember we talked about in the last unit that if the point is on the line of reflection, it's not going to move. So that's why it should have been B. And the last one? Good. E. All right. Do we have any questions on how to do that? Okay.